Hello and welcome to Take 53. I'm your host, Carol Frausto. Today I will be joined by Skip Stevens. He is the Emergency Coordinator for CARES, which is the Cupertino Amateur Radio Emergency Services. Today on Take 53, we'll find out about this voluntary group and also find out how ham operators benefit Cupertino. So please stay tuned for Take 53.
McGruff here with Regina to sing Users Are Losers.
You know it's okay to say no. I'm telling you it's true. Learning when to say no.
Say no.
That's what you need to do. Learning how to say no.
Say no.
Can make a winner of you. 'Cause users are losers and losers are users. So don't use drugs, don't use drugs. Winners don't use and users don't win. So don't use drugs, don't use drugs. If you know a user even part of the time, tell them to quit,
take a bite out of crime.
Users are losers and losers are users. So don't use drugs.
And help me take a bite out of crime.
Welcome back to Take 53. I'm Carol Frausto. Today we are focusing on a group of communicators who are often called hams. They assist in emergency situations. And joining me is Skip Stevens. He is the Emergency Coordinator for CARES. Skip, welcome.
Nice being here.
Now, I'd like you to tell me how long the Cupertino Amateur Radio Emergency Services, or CARES, group has been in operation.
Well, the hams were reorganized here in Cupertino about 3 years ago this month. And we had a group former to that assisting the city, but that sort of dissipated earlier. So when I came to Cupertino as a new resident, I felt there was a need for this service and got people together again.
So you've been involved in this type of work before you organized the group here in Cupertino?
Yes, I work up in Sunnyvale, and I'm a member of the Sunnyvale ARES group and had been working with them 2 years. And prior to that, when I was going to college, I was the radio officer for Office of Civil Defense in Rensselaer County, upstate New York.
I see. Can you explain how the CARES group works in an emergency situation?
Okay, we're an organization of about 29 members, and when there's an emergency, either recognized through the news services or through a call up from the city, we respond to whatever area the city government or the public service agency designates, bring our radios, bring safety equipment, and provide adjunct communication services to those government agencies.
I see. I noticed that you brought some things along. Could you tell me about those?
Yes. We use shortwave or very high frequency radios, quite similar in concept to what the public safety agencies use. You probably see police officers and firemen wearing radios like these on their belts. Because of the amateur radio service and the way our licenses are, we're not on fixed channels. We can move frequencies and are much more adept in providing communications between the various agencies. When we go on response to an emergency, such as with the fire department or the police services, we'll wear hard hats. Now, these hard hats and the insignias that you see on these hats are approved by the Santa Clara County Council of Firefighters, and these are our official insignia in a disaster requiring safety equipment. When we go out and provide public service type communications, such as the recent Tournament of Bands or the Cupertino Heritage Parade, we'll wear the soft hats, which are much more comfortable and aren't really needed like the hard hats would be.
Do all of the ARES groups wear these type of hats with that same insignia?
Yes, that brings up another interesting point. Every city in Santa Clara County has an ARES group. Santa Clara, Sunnyvale, Cupertino, every city. And we each of us responds either to a city official or to a public safety agency, such as firefighters, primarily firefighters, not the police.
Well, what type of communication do you provide in such crisis, like an earthquake or a fire?
Well, in an earthquake, that's an extreme condition. We might expect that the telephone services would be knocked out because they're fixed wire lines and would be subject to physical damage. Radio communications will take the bulk of the communication needs of the agencies, but police and fire radios will be used primarily for tactical purposes. Where we may come in and provide services are to provide liaison and logistics, getting people moved from one location to another, getting proper supplies, maybe providing for health and welfare for the firefighters, letting their families know that they're safe and responding to the emergency.
I see. Now, do you work in implementing programs with cities? Do you set up the basic program that's going to be used in an event of an emergency? Are you paid by the city? How does that work?
We are volunteers. Amateur radio operators, specifically in the radio service, cannot receive compensation for their work. That's by law of the FCC. But we do respond by setting up the communications network within our organization, and as a result of our semi-professional capabilities, we actually have been called upon by the cities to develop communications plans, emergency communications plans for the cities. So we both initiate our own and also respond to the government services.
Is there a countywide organization that you all work together with?
Yes, we do. We have the ARES program is actually organized up to the district level, the section level. The district consists of each of the cities in Santa Clara County, and we have a ham radio officer who is our boss, our supervisor. And then the 5-county Bay Area of San Mateo, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, Monterey, and San Benito counties are organized into a section, and we have a boss at that level.
I see. What type of schooling or qualifications does someone need to get involved in ham operations?
Well, in basic ham radio operations, many of us get into ham radio just through a natural interest in electronics and the desire to communicate with far-off exotic places. So anyone can go to any of the larger electronic stores and probably pick up amateur radio study guides and start on their way for getting a ham radio license. We are licensed operators. We are a separate and unique service defined by the Federal Communications Commission, and as such, we are tested before we receive that license.
I see. What do you need to start this ham radio operation? Is it just a radio with a receiver, or?
Well, many of our people start off being shortwave listeners, listening to foreign broadcasts in the shortwave frequencies, or go after exotic television. There's a branch of shortwave listening called television distance watching, where when you get unusual conditions, you may see television signals coming on your TV set from Chicago, here in the Bay Area or such. And when people get interested in that on that level, the next level is wanting to be able to communicate back, and you need a license to do that.
I see. Typically, what type of person do you find becoming involved in this type of operation?
Well, you mean getting ham radio licenses? Well, we all get started from a different place. Some of us come in from interest in computers. Some come in from an interest in electronics, television, stereo. Well, quite often it's the technical arts that bring us into ham radio. But often people that have had no previous interest in electronics have been brought into it because they've been associated with a friend or neighbor or relative who is a ham, and they see the ham operating or talking with far off places and say, hey, that's exciting. How do I get started?
I see. When we come back, we'll find out what it is like to talk to someone that you've never met before on a ham radio.
Remember the care package? Well, you'd hardly recognize it today. It's a very different kind of package. It's a pump that brings clean water to an entire village. It's community health education programs. It's small business development to give people a source of income. It's seedlings in plastic bags that will soon be a forest. It's a vaccination program that will keep a child alive beyond the age of 5. CARE, a bigger package for a smaller world.
While climbing, secure figure 8 knot to harness.
Motivation is the key to fighting illiteracy.
Take it to the top!
When taking pictures in low light, always use high-speed film.
Alright guys, come on!
In scouting, what you read is what you do.
And we're back on Take 53. I'm Carol Frausto, here with Skip Stevens of CARES, the Cupertino Amateur Radio Emergency Services. We're going to talk about a little bit about the adventure that's involved with being a ham operator. Skip, on that subject, I know that most people involved with ham operations tend to be in their 30s and 40s. Can you tell me why you think that young people aren't more involved in this?
I think the reason has been very well explained by Wayne Green, an amateur radio publisher and also an alumni of my college. He says that schools are de-emphasizing the technical arts. It's expensive to set up laboratories in high schools for teaching of the technical arts, and the impression is that maybe you can leave the students till later on when they get out in industry to learn these technical arts. Countries such as Japan are learning that they're teaching ham radio and electronics in grade schools and high schools and advocating getting their students, young people, licensed, because the skills that they develop when they're young are carried into their profession. And you can see now how Japan is making a strong emphasis on the electronics world.
Did you see that maybe back, is he saying that, you know, maybe in the 50s or 60s there was more emphasis on these, you know, ham operations, and that's why the older generation is more involved in it now? Well, that's very true. When I was first getting into ham radio, before I got into ham radio, when I was first thinking about going to college, I was going to become a chemist. And surprisingly enough, it was my chemistry teacher in the high school who was a ham radio operator and interested in starting a ham radio club at my high school that changed my mind. He got a group of 5 or 6 of us together, got us studying ham radio principles, electronic principles, and the rules and regulations. And after I got my ham license and set up my first ham station, I was so excited with it, it became my profession. And I now have a doctorate degree in electrical engineering. Well, that's very impressive. Now, do you think that maybe, you know, a lot of these younger people may, because of peer pressure, because kids look at you, and if you're in the sciences more as, you know, maybe with that nerd syndrome kind of thing, do you think that if there was an adult, or maybe if adults were, you know, stood firmer to give children that kind of guidance, saying this is something that's important, that it would be something we'd see flourishing with the young people?
Well, I agree with you. I think that a lot of what forms a young student, a young person, into what they're going to become in later life depends upon the range of experiences that they can acquire as a young person. I think our society and our educational system, because of the costs involved, have become very restrictive. And so you're finding that young people are turning to other diversions besides technical skills. I agree with you. The general impression is that engineering and science is nerdy, and it's not fair. It's going to cost our society in the long run.
We've talked a lot about the emergency services that CARES offers. What other types of events are you involved with during the year?
Well, I mentioned earlier in our segment that we just responded providing communications to Cupertino Tournament Bands Parade, and we got a very nice letter of commendation from Chris Reed from that event. We helped Steve Dowling with Parks and Recs just a couple weeks with the Heritage Parade. In 2 weeks' time, we're going to be going out to McClellan Ranch and providing perimeter security for the Ghost Walk that the city is putting on, making sure that the kids aren't harassed by beasts or by teenagers.
How many members do you have actively involved in the CARES program?
Right now we have 29 or 30, around that number. It fluctuates. People gain interest in our group and join us. People are very mobile these days and moving into and out of the area. We just acquired a wife of one of our ham members who, starting from nothing, acquired the highest level of ham radio license in 3 short months.
do you ever get people that start out in the CARES group with no experience and maybe work to get their qualifications or their licensing?
Well, unfortunately, we have to have a prerequisite that they have the very basic novice license to join the CARE groups and participate actively. However, we do have groups, the Amateur Radio Relay League organization, locally and on a nationwide basis, that we can put interested people in touch with, and where they can sign up for ham radio classes, study classes, to acquire that license.
That novice license, then you have to have testing in order to get that?
That's testing. You have to know International Morse code at a basic 5 words a minute, and have a basic understanding of the rules and regulations of the FCC pertaining to ham radio operations.
I see. Now, if someone is interested and already has maybe the novice license or some other level, how can they get in contact with the CARES group?
Well, to get in contact with the CARES group specifically for joining our organization in the emergency communications response, I would suggest that they leave a message for me with Barbara Brown's office, the assistant to the city manager here at City Hall. I'm a pretty hard person to find during the day and during the evening, so that's the best way. I will check with Barbara for any messages. As far as acquiring a ham license, finding out who's conducting classes, they could probably use the same route. Contact Barbara Brown, and then I'll call them back and let them know who's currently conducting classes.
Okay. How often does your group meet? Do you have monthly meetings?
We have monthly meetings. They're open to the public for anyone that's interested. Generally, it's the first Thursday of the month at 7:30 p.m. down in the employee snack bar area of the City Hall. The City Hall is open that night for the public safety committee, and we are also meeting on that same night to save city resources.
Skip, I'd really like to thank you for joining me. I learned a lot about this organization today.
Well, I'm glad to have been here. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. When we come back, I'll be talking with Laura Gantt from the Central Fire Protection District. We'll be talking about holiday safety.
This is a game you can learn something from. Watch closely. One of these players is mentally retarded. For years, the Association for Retarded Citizens, the ARC, has been helping thousands of people with mental retardation lead healthy, normal lives, right along with everyone else. That's why when you support the Association for Retarded Citizens, everybody wins. Help build the ARC.
Hello, this is Robert Urich. Every year, thousands of people are paralyzed in diving accidents, usually because the water they dive into turns out to be too shallow, or because they hit something hidden at the bottom. But one simple precaution can protect you from accidents like these. Before you dive, try feet first. Wade in, check the depth, look for obstacles. A few moments of caution can prevent a lifetime of paralysis. This safety reminder is from the Will Rogers Institute, White Plains, New York.
Back on Take 53, and I'm here with Laura Gantt. She's the Public Information Officer for the Central Fire Protection District. Laura, thanks a lot for coming back.
Thank you. I enjoy coming back.
Now we're getting close to the holiday season. What do you think are some precautions that parents should take with their children's safety?
Wow, we got I could do a whole segment on this, Carol. First of all, our first holiday coming up really close here is Halloween. And we have a lot of concerns in Halloween because people like to put candles and jack-o'-lanterns and pumpkins and leave them on their porches, and kids come by with their long, draggy ghost costumes or witches, or my kids like to be Dracula, and drag the costumes across the candles. And unfortunately, a lot of the costumes that are made are not flame retardant because they're homemade. So we have a concern about children, their costumes, and candles. If people are going to use candles, they can put them in a place where they're not accessible to children, and keep an eye on them. Don't let them burn and forget that they're there and leave the candles going. We have quite a concern with candles during the holiday season.
That's probably a concern with not even just the children, but your house burning down.
Right.
With that type of a situation.
That carries on over. Candles are something that's used rather universally between now and probably the 4th of,
well, we see it for Christmas, Hanukkah, all those holidays, Thanksgiving.
You set them on the table at Thanksgiving, and again, you might want to use them at New Year's Eve.
Right.
So throughout the season.
So do we have any safety tips on, watching out for those candles burning, or it's just like being cautious?
Being cautious, remember to use your common sense. Never place candles in a decoration setting that is flammable. In other words, for Thanksgiving, if you have a nice arrangement of dried leaves on the tables, yes, a candle would look really pretty there, but we would recommend against it because the dried leaves are what we find burning so often up in the hills or on roofs. So we recommend against that. Same with the boughs that you cut off your Christmas tree and place around your home. It looks nice to have candles burning again around these, but again, you have very, very dried burnable objects, and we would prefer that the candles are away from those and not to put the candles on the Christmas trees.
I couldn't imagine putting a candle on the Christmas tree.
Well,
I know
in many cultures that's what they have always done. It's tradition.
Maybe not lighting them, though. I know that trees are a big problem this time of year because it's a tradition with Christmas.
Right.
Do we have any safety tips for precautions with Christmas trees?
Yes, I would recommend that when people go to purchase their Christmas tree that they use consumer preparedness and caution and some forethought when selecting their tree. Either if you are unable to cut down your own, which would probably be the most ideal because then you know it's very fresh, that may purchase them from a nursery that places them in stands of water where they are kept fresh. Or even when you go to select them, check the branches, pull on the branch. If the leaves don't, or the needles don't come off in your hand, if they're not very brittle, then the tree is fairly fresh and will last longer in your home.
Is that when you know that you should start getting rid of your tree if you touch it in the...
Once you have it at home, the needles are probably going to start dropping, but if they start dropping in great numbers, you notice they're getting very brittle while they're still on the tree even. That is a good time to take your tree down. Once you have your tree in your home, also always keep it in water.
I see. A lot of fires probably start through the use of different types of Christmas decorations. Do you think that manufacturers are really trying to design these decorations so that they are,
yes,
up to standard?
Especially here in the United States and in many countries around the world, they are using more advanced standards and putting flame retardant properties into the decorations, and we're really pleased with that. When people go to purchase decorations, we recommend they look on the box when they purchase them for the Underwriter Laboratories seal, for the State Fire Marshal's seal, or even the Good Housekeeping seal. At least then it has passed some sort of test, and we know that there is some flame retardant materials in them. Many things that you might find in craft marts or in boutiques may have come from the Orient, from Hong Kong or Singapore, and unfortunately a lot of these are not checked by these testing laboratories, and many of them are what causing the most of the problems.
We've touched on a lot of different areas, but what do you think is maybe the most common holiday hazard that you see?
Yeah, it probably relates to the two most common fires. One is in heating, and you burn a lot of fires around the holiday time. It looks so nice and cheery, and it's an economical way to heat your home. But holiday fires in the fireplaces can be dangerous, especially if you haven't had your chimney cleaned in over a year, which is something we do recommend. Also, space heaters can be dangerous in that they can get placed too close to a curtain, or something can be set over top of it to dry, or even children with their little pajamas getting close to it to warm up after a bath, or even if on a cool night, clothes could actually catch on fire. And at that time we recommend someone grab them with a blanket or towel, smother the flame, roll them on the ground, and immediately place them in cool water. A second most common fire in the home is going to be your cooking fires, which, what do you do at holiday time? You do a lot of baking and a lot of cooking, and we recommend people be very cautious in the kitchen, that they cook with the appropriate lid to the corresponding pan or pot that they're using nearby to smother the flames, and possibly a box of baking soda and a fire extinguisher.
Laura, well, I'd like to thank you for coming and helping us find out about these holiday safety tips.
Thank you, Carol, for inviting me.
Maybe we can have you back again in the spring.
Great, I'd look forward to it.
Great. I'd like to thank my guests today, Skip Stevens from CARES, the Cupertino Amateur Radio Emergency Services, and Laura Gantt from the Central Fire Protection District. I'd like to thank you for joining me here on Take 53. I'm your host, Carol Frausto, saying please join me as I continue to explore the issues that face your community on Take 53.